The Independent Electoral Commission's Constitutional Court application to postpone the local government elections, one of the most burning questions facing constitutional experts this week. Would it be correct for the courts to fulfill the role of the legislature in declaring the election beyond the stipulated period constitutional? And if it does, would it be tantamount to overreach? Independent constitutional expert Rebecca Sibanda joins us now to unpack these various very complex issues facing our young democracy this morning. Rebecca, it's great to have you with us on the show. As we all try to understand what's at stake here when the IEC does go to the Constitutional Court. For one, is the court in a bit of a difficult position, given that the IEC did not take this application to Parliament first?
Good morning, and thank you for having me. I think, yes, I think the court is definitely in a corner at the moment because, like you've said, we operate in a democracy that has the principle of separation of powers. It is not the role of the Constitutional Court or any other branch of the judiciary to make constitutional amendments or to make decisions that will have far-reaching constitutional consequences such as this one. I think that the IEC could have reasonably, I think that's what the arguments those are the arguments being put forward by those opposing the IEC's application, that the IEC could have reasonably foreseen that it was going to be difficult or impossible to successfully hold elections at this period as far back as last year, and then they should have taken the initiative and approached Parliament, which is the legislative arm of our government, that should have taken, started the process of either amending the Constitution or taking other steps to ensure that free and fair elections could take place within the confines of the Constitution as well as the pandemic. So I think the court is definitely being approached to kind of put a rubber stamp on what could be considered unconstitutional conduct on the part of the IEC.
That's open to opinion, though, isn't it, Rebecca?
Absolutely.
That the IEC
Absolutely.
could have reasonably foreseen that we'd be in this situation in 2021.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But I think the thing is the IEC is tasked with, monitoring the political and constitutional and other environments in the country. This is exactly why this body was established. It's a Chapter 9 institution whose sole task is ensuring that free and fair elections take place. So I think that while it is definitely a matter of opinion, like I said, this is the only task they have. Back last year, they should have, maybe taken the steps to commission the Moseneke report back then even. I think what constitutional law experts are looking at is just the run-up to October, just the little lead time that we've had. It suggests, and, the suggestion is just as bad as fact, it suggests that perhaps the IEC has been unprepared.
So depending on what the court decides today or when it does deliver its decision, let's say in the one scenario, the result is that the elections do go ahead in October. We know that the IEC has accepted the findings of the Moseneke inquiry in terms of its finding that it's unlikely we will have an election that is free or fair. I mean, what does that mean? It means that if we go to the polls in October, the IEC has already said, by accepting those findings, that the elections are not free and fair.
Look, once again, the IEC has a responsibility, a constitutional and legal one, to ensure that these elections go ahead without hiccup. I think that we've seen the reports that they may be struggling in terms of funding for PPE, etc. This is why they've approached Treasury to help, support that process. And if the elections do go ahead in an unfree and unfair manner, then the legal challenge, the option, or the option to pose a legal challenge to the freeness and the fairness of the elections is open to everyone, including political parties. And I think that the court is in a difficult situation because should the court find that the elections should go ahead, someone is already waiting in the wings to challenge the freeness and the fairness thereof. And if the court does postpone the elections, somebody is going to say, you know what, this is unconstitutional. The court is in a very difficult place. But I do trust that, we have an incredible bench that should it postpone the elections, will find a legal and constitutionally feasible reason. I mean, the court could very well find that the rights to health and life and safety outweigh the right to vote in this instance. We don't know what the court is going to say.
Is it too late at this stage for the IEC? I mean, might the court direct the IEC to Parliament?
You know what? I think it will not. And if it does, it will be under the auspices of a postponement. Because we've seen how long and how arduous a constitutional amendment process is. It will take, the drafting of the constitutional amendment bill. There will be deliberations. There has to be public participation in order to meet constitutional muster. So if there is a direction to the legislature, I think it will still be under the auspices of a postponement.
And it will still mean, in many respects, as you say, there are critics waiting in the wings to act
Absolutely.
one way or another. It will still mean, ultimately, constitutional overreach.
Absolutely.
So Rebecca, what do we do? Ideally, all things being equal, what do we do? What's the right decision?
We wait and see. We wait and see what the court says, and we move accordingly. I think that, like I said, the court can make one of two decisions, and we just have to take whatever decision is made and run with it.
The argument from smaller political parties that it's impossible, particularly for those smaller parties, to have a fair chance, a fair bite at this election cherry. Is that one that you reckon holds water?
I think so. I think that the right to vote, it goes over and above the right to wake up on election day and go and cast your vote. It encompasses the right of political parties to engage in free and fair campaigns in the lead up to voting day. And as they have indicated, smaller parties are unable, due to funds or their electorate not being the kind of people who engage with content on social media, for example, to engage with their electorate effectively. That could be a consideration that we're going to hear in the court today during the hearings. So I think that it's definitely a valid point that the court must consider, that elections include the right of political parties to fairly engage with their electorate right up to voting day.
But insofar as the Constitutional Court is concerned today, there is a clear indication that this is pretty much the definition of being stuck between a rock and a hard place.
A rock and a hard place, absolutely.
Rebecca Sibanda, thanks very much for your time this morning on the AM Report. Certainly an interesting time for people like you. She is an independent constitutional legal expert. We're in uncharted waters. We're going to have to see how things unfold in the Apex Court today as the Independent Electoral Commission approaches the court to postpone the local government polls. Certainly one we're keeping a very close eye for you. Still ahead for you this morning. It's just gone 27 minutes after 7 o'clock. In fact, it's 7:30 this morning. Health Minister Dr. Joe Phahla's weekly briefing on government's response to the COVID-19 pandemic is set to begin. Once it does, we will take you there live. Stay with the AM Report.